Marketing technology architects help organizations get more usage and mileage out of the tools and technologies they use to drive their marketing. And it's a career that's picking up pace. But what do they actually do? It's a really great question. That's why I'm joined here today with Saniul, who's actually working as one. But before we jump into who you are, where you work and what you do, can you describe the role of marketing technology architect in 1 minute or less?
Yeah, no worries. A MarTech, which is what we call it as a marketing technology, it's focused on more the strategy around the business and architecting that across different functions, different technologies, which just happens to be from a marketing initiative, but it could be across the business. So that's where a MarTech Solution Architect falls into.
Very nice. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that was very clear. So marketing technology or MarTech architects clearly have a lot to offer organizations looking to consolidate their tech stack. So where do you work? Are you working for an end user, as in a customer of Salesforce, or are you on the consulting side?
Yeah, so I'm on the consulting side. I work at Brightgen. I head up their MarTech practice, but I also work as their principal MarTech Solution Architect. But I've worked across client side as well. But I've known, like, for me to have more exposure to the wider scene, consultancy side is my thing.
Yeah, there was some fact floating around a few years ago that 85% of Salesforce solution architects, so not strictly what we're talking about here, but 85% of them work on the consultancy side. Yep. So yeah, that makes total sense why you're there. Yeah. So yeah, I thought I'd ask, because you can find marketing related architects on both sides. But there's been a lot of chatter in the Salesforce community about the importance of architects. And more importantly, what it truly means to be an architect. So why are MarTech architects required?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say 4 years ago, it didn't even exist. So initially it started off more platform. You focus around the platform, you're a marketer, automation consultant, or Salesforce, whichever. But over the years, as the demand has grown in terms of emerging technologies, the need for a MarTech architect has become a need, simply because there's too many technologies, too many things happening, too many stakeholders involved. And where the need comes in for a MarTech solution architect is being able to get different individuals from different functions. So you may have a CTO, CIO, a CMO, a CRO, all these individuals with their own objectives, bringing these individuals together into the same page, investing into a pot together is an art itself, but that's quite difficult to do. And it could take up to 6 to 12 months even getting there. But this is where a MarTech solution architect fits in. They fit into more of a strategy, engaging with the C-suite, the directors, and then following that through across the business.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think as organizations are required to move faster and faster, there's always going to be potential friction between all of these different actors with their motivations. Like you said, expanding tech stacks, larger data volumes.
Just on that one as well, I think this might be worth adding on, is something that's quite common is, at the moment, it's CMOs versus a CIOs versus a CTO. There's a bit of a dilemma, you could say, but a predicament. But really, the CIO wants to help the CMO wants to help everyone. They all want to help each other, but they don't know how to tackle it. And this is something where a CMO may reach out to a solution architect and say, help us engage. And that's the engagement I have from CMOs, actually, in the last 3 months, from a CMO and a director. Their question was, how do I engage with these individuals? Not about the product or the solution or the capability, but how do I speak to them?
Yeah. And further to your point, there's that cliche that marketing's a cost center, and the CMO may, in some organizations, not be taken as seriously. So it's about putting marketing technology on the map for that organization. No, that's great. So what do you predict will happen to the role? Do you think it will grow in popularity, or do you see it declining?
I would say, so the first one is the term MarTech. So this has suddenly turned into a buzzword. It's simply marketing technology, but in the last few years, everyone's a MarTech expert, but they happen to work in one platform. And I reckon that word will fizzle out, and it's also quite misleading. The reason why I say misleading is because the need around it is focusing on the customer centricity. So any product that's focusing on the customer first happens to be a marketing goal and they call it MarTech, but really it could be anything. It could be a BI platform, CRM platform, it could be anything. It just comes down to how you use it. So the word MarTech will definitely fizz out, but the popularity and demand across customer centricity will be a huge thing. And this is something that I think in the future, in the next 5 years, almost every company will need to have an individual who says, I'm here to look after the customers. Tell me what I need to do. Tell me what to look into. Whereas typically from a company perspective, people look at it from an organization perspective. How do we make more money? How do we do this? But the question is, how can we get more value to them? And in return, we'll get money. It's an angle. It's just a perception.
Yeah. So, big question. Are there any specific trends that you see advancing or driving the MarTech architect demand?
I would say the first one, which kind of goes back to the previous one, is the emerging technologies and the emerging trends. So a good example is TikTok. Good 3 years ago, I remember seeing someone posting a video of them singing. I was thinking, what kind of app is this? Now it's like one of the biggest apps available and everyone wants to get onto it. With these type of emerging trends taking place, your popular platforms that have the time to keep creating integrations too much, your IT team having an integration team, and it's just too much of everything. So the trend will always be emerging trends, emerging technology, constant at really rapid pace. And companies, for them to grow to the pace of the market, they need to, the trend will be adopting platforms that allows them to seamlessly connect those data sources and then be able to do targeting, which then moves on to the hybrid approach. So pre-COVID, everything was like, you have to be on site to work. Everything has to be on site. Post-COVID, everything needs to be digital. But now people are going back to the open market. Everyone's going out and about. It's become more hybrid first. So there's a new trend where people are expecting their offline experiences to reflect digital experiences and vice versa. So they want that to marry up. And also when they're speaking to different functions, so if I'm speaking to marketing, sales, and then service, I want them to know what I previously did rather than reinforming them what I just told their colleague. So there's another trend where, again, it connects to the data sources and being able to personalize in different touch points in the ever-changing, ever-growing technology market. And then the third one, privacy. So I was at the LMX, I think, MarTech Alliance event. And it was something that was slightly touched on, was privacy. And what I found fascinating was everyone was talking about these emerging technologies. Everyone's got this shiny object syndrome going on. But no one's actually paying attention to privacy. Because the more digital first-party implicit data you're collecting, the more privacy is a demand and a need. And people expect that as an expectation of the standard, not, oh, it's great that you're doing that, thanks a lot. So privacy is something that at the moment, it's not a trend, but it needs to be a trend because eventually it will bite companies where if I use those, let's say we got 28 technologies all connected, we're collecting all this first party data, but the privacy has not been consented to. That company is now open to so many complaints. So that's definitely something I would say. And the final one that I came across in the MarTech event, I think the company's called, I can't actually remember what it's called. Alex, there was another event, like a gamification company. I can't remember what it's called. Playable marketing. So it's called playable marketing, where because of the Gen Z generation, people are bored. Their attention span is a lot lower, and to keep them engaged is really difficult. So a platform like Playable, where it's slowly starting to get more integrated with Marketing Cloud and so on, it's about keeping them engaged, rewarding them through gamification interactions, and how long they could, and measuring that success based on how long they're engaging with them. And it's proven a lot of success, but it's early days. But this is something with the Gen Z who will become eventually the new decision makers, the new influencers. So that will be something that's going to definitely blow up.
That would be interesting. That would be interesting, having a board full of people with very short attention spans. But it's in the seconds, not the hours or minutes, right? And I think a thread that was just pulling all of those trends together is the ability for organizations to pivot. You need to have a handle on those systems to, like you say, add new technologies, connect them with APIs that could be subject to change themselves. And then also with the privacy, being able to pivot and be assured that your privacy is all intact. Well, thank you for that. And I'll have to check out Playable as well.
And just on the trend part as well. So I mentioned those 4 items, and it kind of interacts with every part of the organization, but something that is really undervalued is the importance of change management.
Yeah.
So people are talking about process and platform and forgetting people. And when it comes to technologies, the order the going is, we look at the platform, fit process into it, and then we'll train up the people. When in reality, should we make sure the people understand what they need, and then make sure the people create the process and the platform applies to their process and for the people. So, but that's a change management skill in itself. I wouldn't say I'm a change management expert at all, but there's people who I've come across who are, and I've learned from them. What I just mentioned, that I learned that from that individual, and I've seen the power of that. And at first I thought, that's really irritating. Let me do my job. But afterwards I thought, wow, you know what? I see the value in this.
Yeah. So, I mean, change management and adoption is often, the last hurdle that people fall down, because you can't take the project to success or the implementation to success without it being adopted. So that was one of the things that came up in we write consultant salary guides every year and kind of like tips to advance your career. And, for budding consultants that want to become, consultants that are budding solution architects, change management is one of those things we highlighted. So why not? It definitely translates to the marketing space as well.
Definitely.
Great. So it was funny when you reached out to me, actually, because it took a few exchanges for the penny to drop, as we say in the UK, that we had actually worked together 6 or 7 years ago. And back then we were Pardot consultants, functional consultants. Well, Pardot now account engagement. So that made me think, okay, what's different from that role when you were a consultant to where you are now as a solution architect? What are the main differences?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I would say the first one was when I worked at that previous role. Learning the platform was the key, and being the expert at that platform. And I needed to know everything. And you always need to be ahead of the trends in that particular platform. And at that point, you and I were quite fresh, but we were like experts in that area doing quite complex things in that platform. But the difference from a solution architect from a consultant, I would say, is the consultant is always needed regardless if it's client side or consultancy side. But a solution architect is the one that comes in from a strategic perspective, and they create programs of work in terms of these are the capabilities we can deliver quarter X, Y, Z. Whereas that MarTech architect behaves as the oracle for a business. So if you got a CDP, customer data platform, marketing automation platform, CRM here, another technology here, let's say playable marketing has blown up, now you've got privacy. That MarTech solution architect will bring them together. But that MarTech solution architect is not an expert in any of those. They will be an expert in strategy and aligning strategy with technology and being great at engaging with people, building relationships, documentation, and making sure things are signing off in a certain order. And it's almost a bit of an art. But then, like say, my situation, engaging these sort of engagements, we have consultants in each platform, Market Cloud, Pardot, account engagement, and so on. So I'll always confer with each of one of them and say, this is what I'm thinking. And I'll do the broader approach of it. And then I'll say, can you spec this out for me? Is there anything I need to be aware of? Are there any limitations? Are there new trends, any features being released I need to be aware of? Or is something being retired? They'll let me know. I'll put that back into the strategy. I'll relay that back. And then they don't need to go ask that individual. They can ask me. I could confer. I could reply on their behalf without having to speak to 10 different consultants. The solution architect is the oracle, and the client will only speak to that person.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. So you need them both. Like I will struggle without them in the company. If they're not there, I'll probably leave. I'm not, it's not worth the stress. But, so you need them both. But that's where I would say the roles change, because back before that individual, you probably met him, Adam Dorr. He had that type of role, that MarTech Architect sort of frame, and he will always speak to me, and we worked really well together. And I kind of learned the path there through him.
No, that's so true, because you need the breadth and the depth. You know, it's a mutually beneficial working relationship. And also, I always say this, it's impossible to keep up and with both, say, Pardot and Marketing Cloud. And then if you ask a consultant to be an expert in 5 technologies, that's just, you know, an impossible feat, really, in this day and age. So I saw an interesting fact the other day. According to IDC, companies suffer up to 30% a loss in revenue due to lead inefficiencies, purely lead inefficiencies. So how would a MarTech architect start to solve some of these issues?
Well, I think that 30% is it's a lot lower than it would be, really. There's a lot more inefficiencies. But it comes down to what I mentioned before about different functions and not speaking to each other. You've got sales, marketing, and service. And the common issue at the moment is people think this is a linear process. This is referring to lead inefficiencies. So you have marketing, let's say advertising, then marketing, sales, and then service. And there's this almost like a funnel approach, like a dependency order, but that's a false sense of operations. It should be stacked up on each other like that rather than this angle. So if they're stacked up on each other, you have advertising, so the advertising lead, media lead, advertising lead, marketing lead, sales lead, service lead, come together and say, this is what we're trying to achieve. Let's put our thoughts together. By doing that, you're going to capture any inefficiencies. Service may say, oh, we're having to ask X, Y, Z. And then advertising will be like, well, we're already asking that. Why are you asking for that? And then marketing will be like, oh, well, I didn't know you needed it. We can put it into our marketing automation cloud and put it together. And then sales will say, ooh, that particular field is quite interesting for us. We could use that for our grading, how we could prioritize better and put into our reports. That's a fine example of stacking it together, building a community, monthly check-ins, but they don't do that. What they do is report to each other, this is what we're doing. They'll get challenged and then they get a bit protective. But if they don't do that in the first place and they work together as one team and not treat it as we're a different function, then they could capture most of it just by speaking to each other.
And it's, being said over and over that joint metrics is the one way to bring those teams together, because then...
North Star.
Yeah, exactly. But shared objectives, because otherwise then every man for himself or woman for herself. And what I loved about you talking about the stacking is because it's not linear. I'm just thinking of an example that even before the lead is captured, some prospective customer may go onto a chatbot and ask a question about the product, which would be in services remit to supply those answers and that content. So it's really, I wouldn't say a jumbled mess, but it's not linear.
No, it's definitely not linear.
Great. So another thing we mentioned when we had a chat was we don't want to confuse the job market. What we mean by that is that job titles can be easily misinterpreted, and it's not that a senior consultant, for example, a product account engagement consultant, won't naturally become a solution architect, because there's more to it than just time in the role. So the step up, in my opinion, is that you need to work at a high level, like cross cloud, rather than being in cross beyond the Salesforce platform as well, rather than being centered in one place on the platform. What are your thoughts there?
Well, so 100% agree with that. I think the steps to transition over would be, of course, you will always have a domain you specialize in. You spend 5 years building your skill set, your salary basically. But the transition to a solution architect is learning strategy, different type of strategies depending on the different business models. Because if you're working client consultancy side, you can come across so many different business models. They can say, how can this apply to our business model? And you need to know. So strategy, and also transitioning into more frameworks. And what I mean by frameworks is, whenever you're trying to articulate something, if you don't use a framework to tell it in a storytelling format, there's people in that room who don't have a clue about marketing, the lingo, terminology. You got to simplify this using a framework that is easy to explain without them knowing that you're using a framework. So and I've got loads of frameworks on my pool, but I'm thinking, okay, I can use this. And it helps me for documentation, and it just helps to get everyone on board. And another part is being able to really finesse your documentation. Maybe you're creating process maps, technical designs, and column artifacts. And basically, these are, I would say, the transition steps to get into a solution architect. Of course, with the cross-cloud part. So there's quite a lot of components, but typically they would happen accidentally, really. You'll be forced into a position and you learn on the job, and then you kind of just grow from there. And that's most solution architects I've met in MarTech, very much that's the storyline.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because it's not a role you book learn.
Yeah.
You know, you don't just sit through, I don't know, a certification and
exactly.
then come out qualified as a solution architect. It does take experience, which is why I think it is a natural step for senior consultants, but not a given. And I just remembered another thing from when we were working together all those years. I remember saying to you, this is some of the best documentation I've ever seen. So yeah, that is definitely one way to get solution architect.
You know what? I wasn't sure if you remember that. I was thinking, I wonder if Lucy remembers what, the feedback she gave me. I shared that across my colleagues and they were like, oh, he's getting beheaded. And you know what? I did get beheaded at that moment.
Well, documentation is no one's favorite job. So the fact that you've nailed it is great.
I remember because in that particular project, we were delivering 11 journeys and we kind of got you on short notice. And for me, it was like, well, we're working as a team together. It doesn't matter that you're freelancing. If I do my best part to document this, to make sure you have everything you need, you could do everything you can do and then add value, which you did. You started doing different things. I was like, oh, how can you do it like that? And then you were like telling me certain things I didn't know. I was like, oh, great. So it was easy working together because if you work in a similar way, transparent, it's just easy for anyone to jump on ship.
Yes. Yeah, that's really good. That's a really great place to end as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Solution architect, make it easy for anyone to jump in and understand.
Definitely.
Well, thank you so much for joining
me
today. I'm sure this content will be really valuable for people.
Thank you.
Thanks.